Okay, so I don't know if a lot of you guys, this is like the more palatable version of the Helix Stadium. Big Daddy behind here, £1,980 in the UK, I think over £2,000 for you guys in the US. It's kind of out of reach, I think, for a significant chunk of people, or at least like that, especially for you guys in the US, where it's above the £2,000 mark. It's kind of like, you know, I think mentally that's sort of a number that is kind of crazy. Inflation is what it is. You know, we talked about this plenty. The stadium floor, the more affordable version, which in the UK comes in at like £1,550, which is, I think, about in line with something like the Tone Master Pro or the Quad Cortex. So in this video, I kind of just wanted to look at it and talk about it. So hopefully you're here with me for that if you're interested. In terms of quality and all of that sort of stuff, this part here feels, on the Stadium XL, it feels metal. So there are a few like little bits and pieces that I think are, you know, a little bit pared back in terms of like overall quality feel of it. There's like little hex keys that screw these bits on the edge, whereas this is like a plastic casing all around. So I think that's partly how they're able to keep that cost slightly down. So it's not just that there are not an expression pedal and elements like that, and not scribble strips. Those are the headline elements, but actually as well, this little casing part here is more plastic than this, which is metal. So I think that's obviously an area where you can also make a bit of a saving. Other than that, it's more or less the same kind of experience. And so when I plug into it, you know, all of the good things about Stadium are pretty much still there in terms of like, okay, there's a big old chunky screen. almost everything that is good or bad about the Helix Stadium is also good or bad about the Stadium floor. So this is just called Stadium XL. So my gigging preset I can instantly transfer across. Now, the biggest user difference here is that instead of Scribble Strips, I've got this kind of performance or play page, and for my gigging preset, I think this wouldn't be too much of an issue. Because I know that these snapshots along the bottom are going to be clean with a delay. This is a gain boost. But for me, when I'm looking at the buttons, I'm much less sure about what is underneath versus if I'm using the Stadium XL. You know, at a glance, it's much more difficult to tell. My buddy Lewis Corbett, his Scribble Strips have been not working on his Helix floor for a while anyway, his old Helix, so maybe he'd be fine with this. And if you're coming from like a Quad Cortex, again, I think you'll be fine. The color coding is pretty useful, so I'm going to have a good idea that this is a drive. The trouble is, potentially, like when these things are not on, like it's not that easy to tell what colour's underneath there. Green shows up quite well, but could this be a drive or a compressor? You know, I'm not so sure. And then this part of the page seems to stay on at basically all times, kind of like that to get out of the way in my performance page and for it to just be maybe a bit bigger. It's a really sleek look, I think. So much lighter, so much lighter. I love this form factor. Here's the ToneMaster Pro, which is about the same sort of footprint, right? I think it might be a little bit shorter that way. I think ToneMaster Pro is probably a bit heavier. Yeah, I wasn't quite prepared for much lighter as a potential travelling unit. I think the same amount of foot switches. Obviously you lose the expression pedal and you lose an instrument input and a couple of send and returns, I think, right? But in general, I love that form factor. I think once it's actually on the floor, it's not really going to make too much difference because the footprints are, you know, just like a couple of inches either way. But during travel and also the sheer price differential, I think so you see it's a little bit smaller in basically every dimension, considerably lighter, same size screen, same amount of foot switches. The one thing that we've got here, Scribble Strips, that's the one thing that I wish they could have figured out a way to get those in there. Maybe they make a Helix Stadium L at some point. You see the back here of the normal Stadium, you've got extra input, 2 send and returns. Other than that, virtually identical, as Bruce Buffer would say. So yeah, if I press mode, I can go between the 2 different modes. So I think I could gig this on my gigging preset. Where it would work less well, I think, would be on a preset that was like unfamiliar to you. Right, we've got 2 home views. You press home view, get this. So this is now going to tell you what's underneath each switch. So I can now see that that's the Scream 808. Now, unless I know the preset really well, I think I'm going to struggle with that without some serious glasses on. And the other thing is that you feel a little bit less connected to this signal chain thing. Do you know what I mean? Workflow wise, it is different. I'll do a whole different video on that. What I like about it is definitely if I was traveling and space was a factor in that case, definitely appreciate that smaller form factor. I do think in general it looks really good. The other thing is would hold up better in that case. It's kind of like the Helix to Helix LT thing, you know, where like you save £500 and you get basically the same experience. It's just how important are those scribble strips is the question. So I'm going to mull this over for a bit more time. But in general, I'm really liking that there is this option out there that is cheaper, like considerably cheaper. Okay, something to bear in mind here. So I've now got it in this mode here. So I've updated the firmware and this is actually working properly now. So you can see I'm in a combo mode. So you've got snapshots along the bottom, stomps along the top, but these two remain as bank here. Switch between the two. You see transistor tape is available on the stomp page, but it's obscured by bank here. I went into settings, I couldn't find anything to, you know, just make those into normal buttons. The next step is that obviously I would want that pedal that is over here to be assigned over here instead, or available at least. You could just hold this like that and swap that assignment. That's really quick stuff, so that's good. Anything else of note? So ignore that, it's the same. It's just that that was assigned over there. I do think I might have to do a separate video on this, because whilst this is a much more expensive unit and bigger, I think if I had that shaved off, for the money, I think I'd rather have the scribble strips. Just because it is so much more useful, in my opinion. Does all the same stuff. For me, there is an argument in my mind that maybe like a device that didn't do some of the posh stuff. So like obviously this does your focus view and all of that good stuff. It also will do everything that's in the other device, including like your showcase and all that stuff. And I wonder, is there an option out there for like a device which is cheaper still, which doesn't have all of the showcase gubbins, like it's just about the amps and tones like that? I think there's an argument that maybe that is also something that could be useful for folks. You know, I think there's a chunk of us that are maybe thinking like, is that showcase something I'm ever going to use live? Can we shave off a bit of the cost if we just don't have that for users? I don't know. But yeah, 1550, this puts it squarely in that space with the Tone Master Pro and the Quad Cortex. So I think in the coming weeks that'll be an interesting thing to see. In the coming weeks with updates coming, because Proxy is supposed to be coming in March, then that actually makes this have a kind of different space in the market, whereas this guy behind is like at the very top of the market and, you know, more expensive by a significant amount than anything else except for like an Axfex or FM9. I think this is the one that actually is maybe more significant.